All right, so just waiting for Fiona to join me. Hey everybody, another Core Confidence Facebook Live. I have my book here, just went missing actually, I couldn't find it. Here we are, let's add Fee. Here she comes. Hope she's not hovering on my shoulder like she was last week. Here you come, there you are.
Here I am.
Hi, how you doing?
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. It's always nice to meet like this.
Yes, I know.
All right. So last week, I was just saying I've got my book here. Just had to go hunting for it. Got lost. And also we started talking last week about, I guess, the different aspects of the wheel. I put a bit of a shout out to people who had bought the book so far to see if they've got any questions. And I think it'd be great to start, Fee, with, if you're new to the Core Confidence building blocks, if you're new to the conversation, how would you recommend going about using the book? Because, 10 is a lot to focus on. So what's your thoughts on that? I mean, we talk about this all the time, but for those watching.
Yeah, for those people who are new, one of the things that we're really careful about in the workshops, which is where the work came from, is not overloading people. So exactly as Kate says, not thinking, oh my God, I've got 10 things now I've got to go and work on. Normally what we find is for everybody, there are 2 or 3 segments of the wheel, 2 or 3 of those building blocks that just speak to you. And it's almost like you have an internal reaction and you go, oh, yeah, that one's really true for me. That's really, that's something I know. I've come up against that several times, or right at the moment, what's going on for me with my career or with my boss or my workplace, I really know I need to spend a bit more time on that one. So it's almost like through just taking a moment to reflect and see what's going on, you can, or your intuition pretty much will tell you which ones are going to be most relevant to you now. And then it's really a matter of just diving in and jumping into those pages. And what you'll find is in that section, it will cross-reference into other sections, and that might be a lead into when you've got a bit more time. Oh, okay, I'm going to go and take a bit more of a look at that one. So it's not a linear thing. You don't need to do them in any particular order. In fact, it's probably quite useful to do them in the order that most resonates for you and is most relevant to what's happening for you at the moment.
Yeah, and I love, I was at the airport 2 weeks ago flying to Melbourne. Anyway, we were delayed and I started chatting. And this really talks to this whole thing around build relationships. And we've got loads of stories about this, Fiona, but you can never underestimate, what a conversation that can start in quite an unusual location and where that can go. And I think that's one of the real essences around 2 of the chapters. One is around build relationships. Who are you connecting with? Who's helping you, achieve your goals, both career and life? And then what are you asking of those people? And so sometimes it might just be having the courage, and this talks to chapter 10 around fear, having the courage to actually start up a conversation, and or secondly, actually having the courage to ask someone for help. And so I was sitting next to this lady. There was I think she had the AFR in front of her, and there was a magazine cover that I was interested in. And so I asked to borrow that, and we of course struck up a conversation. By the time we were boarding the plane, she had the book and sent me an email. By the time I got to Melbourne saying, hey, I started reading the book on the plane. It's awesome. I'm already kind of, a couple of chapters in, I'm really loving it. I've got loads of people I'm going to refer it to. So I think it's that whole piece. It's designed to be an easy read, but also, the most important thing, practical. What is it that you can do today, tomorrow, and not so much the huge things. I think one of the reflections I had last week, and it was very much around the subject of fear. When I was in Melbourne, I caught up with, or I saw someone new in my world speak around fear. And of course, I've already reached out and I'm having coffee with her when she's in Sydney next. So kind of leveraging the relationships. But it really focused me down on my relationship with fear. She introduced me to a new topic called micro bravery. Her name, I've got the business card here, Penny Locassa, is a happiness hacker. But really is really zeroing me down into my relationship with fear. And for me, that was probably, we often get asked the question, Fee, what's the chapters that probably was the most significant for you through writing the book? And for me, it's fear, and it continues to be fear. And Penny talks about challenge where she said, just write down everything that you're scared of, and little things, big things, and then start, hacking your way through that list. And when you do that, huge things happen. And I think it's it's a powerful approach. And I think, something that happened last week, when perhaps there was an opportunity that, I was a bit out of context, and, I shared this with you, Fee. I saw someone who is quite a senior stakeholder in one of our clients, and I couldn't place them in terms of, who they were and their name. And so I missed out on that opportunity. And it's really easy to beat yourself up about those sorts of things. Or alternatively, you can go, okay, cool, you know what, here's how I'd handle it next time, and kind of be prepped, and, even figure out a narrative around capitalizing on that, particularly, if you don't necessarily know what to say or do as well. So I think it's an interesting one.
Yes, yeah. And I think, in line with that, Kate, one of the things we say very early in the book is the act of confidence comes before the feeling of confidence. And one of the things we've been really tested with in this work is how often are we going to act? When are we going to take those actions of confidence, even when we don't feel it? And it's a really good reminder. And so now, if I'm ever up against something for whatever reason that I have a second thought about, or I find myself, second guessing and thinking I'm worried about something, I just lean into that and go, actually, the act comes first. So here we go. And inevitably it leads to something else, and something worthwhile, and something good. So I think we're just, if we take those micro skills piece, that's little actions, then turn into other things or open up opportunities. It's a really good one to just get a reframe on that. If I could just do one small thing, Kate, you often say, can I be brave for 5 minutes longer? Or, what can I do for the next 60 seconds? And I think all those little practices really help you and strengthen you in going, yeah, I can do it. And next time, of course, it's easier.
Yeah, 60 seconds of courage is the other one that we often talk about. And actually, I was listening last Friday. I headed down to Canberra just overnight to hang out with a friend and touch base. And so driving time's great time to listen to podcasts, books, and some trainings that I haven't actually had a chance to catch up in a mastermind. And I was listening to a colleague in a mastermind group that I'm part of talk about, this context of embrace the suck. And so what he means is, at the beginning, when you're doing something new, you're going to suck at it. And, to actually embrace that and stick at it and work your way through it, so that you actually move beyond being crappy at it and actually into mastery. And I love that reframe, because I think in the beginning, when we're doing new stuff, we just go, oh, this feels really awkward. And it does, it feels uncomfortable. And so how do you actually, if you set up that expectation that, probably in the beginning, I'm not going to be that great at something new. And, what's most important is I learn from that, and then I'm persistent and I keep coming back. And I love that reframe, because it's the fear of failure, or the fear of, not being perfect, or the fear of really stuffing it up that stops us from doing something. But if we can get really clear that actually I expect of myself to be pretty crappy to start with, and actually now I've lowered my expectations, I'm like, oh, that was okay, let's go again. And I think that's something I'm constantly talking to people around, expectations. Today, doing some calls with some new people coming into the Accelerate program that we run, talking about that expectation piece, which is, what is it that you expect of yourself, the golden girl or the golden child, and all of those sorts of things. And while ever we've got those expectations and or beliefs, so this starts to come into this whole conversation around what we think is possible for ourselves and what we don't think is possible. And I was reading a book, one of the Audibles actually, which was all about thinking big. That's really sparked it. It was the same time, the Audible and the presentation from Penny around micro bravery really kind of catalyzed into one interesting kind of conversation around, so what is it that I believe about myself, and how is that limiting us in terms of what I believe is possible? And I think, in my observations, thinking big versus thinking small, it's often our thinking and our beliefs about what is possible that actually really can limit us.
Yes, oh, definitely, definitely. And look, we see this in the workshops, and we see it in the response to the book, is once you start to unpack this and get a little bit clearer about what's going on for you and where are the opportunities, how can I see this differently, how can I have a different relationship with this topic or this subject. And that piece about expectations, whether it's our perception of others' expectations on us, or very often even more so our own expectations, once we just drop that a little bit, it's so much easier to actually start acting and doing and getting things happening that we want to have happen, but we get so caught up in the, oh, I didn't, or I couldn't, or all of those things start getting in the way. So we're really encouraged to say that people are, listening and taking actions and actually trying new things, sparked by either conversations with us or the book, or, those sorts of interactions. So good stuff.
Yeah, that's the biggest, I share, gosh, I've been racking my brain for the last 60 seconds thinking about where we talk about this in the book, and I couldn't come up with it. I talk about it a lot in the workshop, this whole piece around self-belief and the concept of I can, and that I really have worked to reframe that as an auto kind of response, or a habit that actually, there is nothing that, if I start even to think about, I could never do that, or I can't, my automatic response is, well, how can I? Or that means I've got to do it. And I don't know that we actually share this story in the book, Fee. But for me, this was around running. So I was, as a kid, I sucked at running, like really bad, hated cross country training, was always at the back of the pack, walking with my friends. And so not a love, but in my head, I really want to love it, because I know it's great for me from a body metabolism point of view, and keeps me lean, and all of those sorts of things. And I was hanging out with my brother-in-law and chatting away about something, and he told me he was going to do a half marathon, and literally my auto response was, gosh, I could never do that. And so I, in that moment, just kind of went, you know what? And I said to him, if I committed to doing it, would you commit to training me, come and help me? And, and he was like, yep, absolutely. So we did 6 months of training, and I ran the 21 Ks and didn't run for 9 months after. So I was convinced I'd fall in love with it. But I didn't. And yeah, it's fascinating. My relationship with fitness, but particularly running, is a part of my world that constantly, I'm constantly experimenting with my own psychology around what works and what doesn't work. I've embraced the fact that I'm never going to love running, and so I use strategies to make it as easy as possible for me to make choices that support me moving forward. Hey, Miss Kate, how are you? Great to have you online. So we've touched a little bit around fear. Let's jump over to authenticity. So be authentic, because I think this is one that, initially when we built the model, it was an important piece, but it was actually, some work we've done in the last 12 months personally through training we're part of that really made this, us take this a whole lot deeper. And I think have such a new perspective on this, because we knew it was important, but I think initially our view was, show up and be who you are, and this whole concept of imposter syndrome and all of those sorts of things. But I think what's really started to emerge is actually this is a really big piece, because, it's number one, clarity around what I believe, which is one piece of the model, but then actually having the courage to actually show up in that way or articulate that message. And I think that's taken on a whole new positioning for us, just in time for when we were finalising the manuscript for the book. So we've been able to include some things in the book in that frame.
Yes, I think this is such a big topic for people, and it means different things for different people. And we sort of found even the definition around authenticity was so broad and so varied, and it didn't seem that there was something that was easy to latch onto initially. And as you say, Kate, we really spent a lot of time with this, and actually did our own work so that we could share it more readily with others. And I think the piece about authenticity that we came to is that there is something about when we know who we are, when we're connected to that, when we have that deep inner sense of, oh, yes, I know how I feel about, you know, I might not know the specifics of this circumstance, but I know who and what I am, and therefore how I'm going to be in this moment. And I'm not necessarily going to be swayed by what's going on externally. I've got this really quite solid sense that I know what is true and what is right for me. And, you know, we talk about this quite a lot in the book in terms of, you know, people get caught up, you know, with authenticity. They think, oh, that means I have to tell everybody everything, or I have to disclose everything, that's authenticity. And what we really found is no, actually the research doesn't show that. It says that, you know, get really clear, you know, this is what's going on outside, know that, and then choose what it is that's appropriate and, you know, useful to share in this moment. So it's a dance here between, you know, absolutely owning your truth and being congruent, and not needing to overshare in every circumstance. And that's not always the most useful thing to do. So I guess that was one distinction that we really found useful. You know, I think it's a topic that, you know, we could have spent almost a whole book on just on its own. And the other thing we found is that authenticity and vulnerability are very closely related. So, you know, the only way that you're ever going to actually be able to show up and for other people to experience you as authentic is when you're actually able to drop into that space of vulnerability. And, you know, one of our favorite authors, Brené Brown, does some beautiful work around this and really helps us understand the importance of vulnerability, because once we're able to be vulnerable, people get to see and experience a part of us that is very often we protect, we have a bit of armor around it, we hide it from others. And as soon as we kind of soften into and allow people to see that part of us that's often hidden, something happens, and there's a human connection in that moment that is so true that all of us recognize it as authentic. And the place we recognize it is in our heart. We feel it literally in our bodies, that connection.
Yeah, and I think what most happens if we think about building rapport, it's that, oh, you're like me. I think one of the things that we hear so often from people around the subject of confidence is this perspective that I look at other people and they seem to be confident and they've got everything together. And that actually, you know, when you get in a room with people and you start talking about stuff and they actually, you know, remove maybe the mask, or they actually share some of what's going on, what we find is that everyone's kind of having the same conversation. Everyone's kind of doing that thing where everyone else seems to think I'm confident, but inside I'm not necessarily confident at all, or actually I have a really big question mark over this particular, you know, aspect of who I am and how I show up. And actually I don't feel confident there. So I think, you know, it's that piece around you're like me, and that, you know, I think one of the biggest things that we see is everyone seems to think when they start talking about challenges with confidence, it's just them, and that actually something's wrong with me. And what we've, you know, absolutely found, actually nothing's wrong with anyone. It's just, you know, that we've got strategies to give our confidence away. It's not about finding it or rebuilding it. It is about building that strong connection. And more than anything, it's actually about looking at the strategies that we probably automate, and their habits, and, you know, self-talk's a really great one. They're habits that we actually use that actually tear our confidence away. And how do we start to interrupt those patterns? How do we start to have better patterns that serve our confidence as well? And, you know, I think the big thing here, Fees, it's not, there's no magic pill. You know, I said at the beginning when we started doing this work, if I had a magic confidence pill that I could just give out, I would be a billionaire by now, because, you know, people think that there is, you know, I'll go do a course, I'll study some more. It's not about that. It's the inner game of confidence that is really where the work is to be done, where it's at, and where actually we'll start to build that sustainable core confidence that stays with you for life.
Yeah, definitely. And I think this piece about we're so hard on ourselves. So, you know, this is actually the chapter, I think, where we say, you know, comparison corrodes confidence. And there's a piece about where we look at others and we think, oh, gee, you know, they're so amazing and they're so capable and they're so good at what they do, and I could never be as confident as that, or I could never do what she's doing or he's doing or whatever. And we start comparing ourselves, and that seems to, you know, erode whatever confidence we might have had. And it's just so unhelpful. And what we know is other people are actually looking at you and saying the same thing about you. And this is that we get caught in this thing of giving accolades and giving recognition to others, that if we just stop for a moment, we could actually do more to say, you know what, you're actually doing really well. And when when you actually take a look back at what you're capable of and what you're doing now, you're really performing well. And the more you can kind of give yourself that recognition the way you would to someone else, it's kind of that treat yourself like you would a good friend. You know, we're so quick to judge ourselves and to tear ourselves down, and yet you'd never do that to a good friend or someone you love. So how can you just be a bit kinder to yourself? And actually that's part of this piece too, of really owning all that you are, accepting there are going to be moments for all of us when we slide down that barrel. We can't really feel that strong connection to core confidence. But, you know, the more we practice it, the more we do it, absolutely, it becomes a sustainable piece that's just embedded in us.
Yeah, nice. And we might finish on that note. There's 2 points I'll just add to what you were sharing. The first is that comparison is a habit. So the more that you can, and it's the strategy, one of the strategies where we tear our confidence down. So the more that you can recognize that behavior in it and stop it, like literally just stop it. It's not helpful, as you said. Everything you'd be thinking might be true, right? It might not be true as well, but it's just not helpful. So, you know, cut it off, turn it down, turn the volume down on that one. And I think the second one is the importance of progress. To your piece around, you know, how do we diagnose or provide our own feedback? And that's one of the reasons why chapter 3 on set goals and take action is important, because, you know, our ability to track where we are and the progress we make means that we can actually, you know, do some good self-assessment, say, hey, I've made great progress here and I've achieved that. It's one of the things that you and I do a lot. You know, we've got lists of what have we achieved this year, and, you know, what have we achieved in the week. I'm really clear about being able to quickly and easily, in the moments where, you know, potentially we get frustrated or things aren't going the way we want, or it feels like we're not making the progress that we'd like, that we're able to anchor back to that and go, you know what, actually, I am making progress. We are, you know, moving forward. And I think that's a really important piece around goals, and the piece around setting SMART goals, because that means we've got clear measures and we're able to really clearly articulate where we are, how far we've gone, and in and of itself, that process helps us kind of reinforce that core confidence.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. There's a lovely piece here for everyone, lovely opportunity to, you know, really make sure that we are treating ourselves well, and that we're supporting ourselves to actually recognize when we've made advances, and that, you know, we're actually, it's all good. It's not a race here, and we're not actually competing with anyone. It's really important to take some time to actually reflect on, you know, I'm going okay, and look at what I have done, as well as what I, you know, maybe choose to do in the future.
Yeah, nice one. Well, let's leave it there. Always great to chat with you. Hope you guys have enjoyed the session. Kate, hope you've enjoyed it. If you're listening later on, we're doing these Facebook Lives every week. We've changed it to Monday afternoons, looking to perhaps hit the commuter time frame, as Monday nights 8 o'clock seem to be a TV time frame for most people. So we'll see you again next week at 5:15. Thanks, Fiona. See you guys.
Thanks, Kate. See you.